on the line with us, well, first of all, let me just set this up. Oregon had a ballot measure, Measure 114, which I believe, and we'll do a reality check on that in just a moment, I believe is now the most restrictive gun law in the nation, or it's right up there. And it passed. And now it's being, now we're being sued around this. And disclosure, I'm on the board of a small foundation here and an unpaid board member, I'll add, by the way, of a small foundation here in Oregon called the Oregon Raindrop Fund, and we contributed to the effort to pass Measure 114. Just to be transparent here, as it were. But on the line with us is the district attorney for Deschutes County, John Hummel. He was also a member of the committee that was putting forward Measure 114. DCDA.us, the website. On Twitter, John's handle is John_Hummel, Hummel. John, welcome to the program. Tell us about Measure 114.
Tom, thanks for having me. 114, a bunch of us got together, many in the faith community in the Portland area who were just had enough with the young people dying. Over 600 people a year in Oregon died from gun violence, and Congress is not going to act on it. So we got together and said, we're going to solve this problem in our state locally. And we got together, we gathered signatures. This was not corporate funded. These was grassroots, people gathering signatures at their local grocery stores and churches. And we got it on the ballot, and we had an election in November, and it passed. And here's what it does. First, it bans the sale or use of large capacity magazines. Any magazine that can carry more than 10 bullets are not allowed to be sold or carried in Oregon with limited exceptions. And then also, we require people to obtain a permit before they can purchase a gun. To obtain that permit, you have to pass a class that shows you, one, know how to use a gun safely, and two, it teaches you about the risk of death by suicide from guns. The vast majority of people killed by guns in Oregon and this country are killed by suicide. We certainly focus too much, or we focus on the crimes, the deaths, the homicide deaths, and that's important. But sometimes we forget about the problem of death by suicide. So if you apply for that permit, you show you can use the gun safely, you pass or you take the class that tells you about the risk of gun death. Then there's a background check, and this is real important. The background check must be completed. The background check looks into whether you have a history of criminal convictions that preclude you from buying a gun. Have you committed a homicide in the past? Have you committed domestic violence? Every state conducts background checks, but the vast majority of states are not required to complete the background check, meaning federal law says if the background check is not completed within 3 days, you can buy the gun. That's called the Charleston loophole, because Dylan Ruth committed that awful massacre in Charleston after he bought a gun lawfully. He went to the store, they submitted the records for the background check. The background check was not completed within 3 days. He was sold the gun, and it turned out, lo and behold, he should not have been sold that gun because he had a disqualifying conviction. So we closed the Charleston loophole. That's what 114 does.
So this is true for all guns in Oregon, from little tiny .22 target pistols all the way up to AR-15s?
That's right. If you are going to buy a gun in Oregon under 114, the background check has to be completed, and you have to complete a class that tells you about the risk of death by suicide, and you have to show that you know how to safely use that gun. Is
this the most restrictive gun law in the nation now?
Well, when you combine the two, when you combine the permit to purchase and the magazine, the large capacity magazine ban, I think it arguably is. Many states have the large capacity magazine ban. Some states have the permit to purchase law, Connecticut being the most prominent among them. But I think we're the only state that combines the two. And I can tell you the training about death by suicide that's an added feature of Measure 114 that I think is real important.
Now, this law was supposed to go into effect this week, if my memory serves me correct. In fact, today, I think. And it's been, you've got lawsuits against the state, against implementing Measure 114 at both the state and federal level. Tell us about those.
That's right. We're in it for the long haul here. Of course, if you are engaged in trying to advance reasonable gun safety regulations, you know that the lawsuits are going to come. So this is no surprise. There's a two-prong attack on 114. One's in state court in a small rural community in Oregon, Harney County. There is a challenge filed in that court alleging that 114 violates the Oregon state constitution. And then there was a federal challenge filed in the federal district court in Portland, arguing that 114 violates the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. The federal judge ruled that, based on the evidence that was presented to her, her preliminary ruling was no, the 114 did not violate the Second Amendment. The state court out in Harney County ruled that, preliminarily, based on the evidence that he looked at, that 114 did run afoul of the Oregon constitutional provisions. Both of those rulings are preliminary. The Harney County judge is holding another hearing next week on Tuesday, where additional evidence will be presented. And when each of those judges reaches their final ruling, of course, it's going to advance up the appellate level, and we expect to ultimately be decided by the United States Supreme Court.
So it could be months or years even before this law actually goes into effect?
Well, no, we're hoping that it goes into effect next week. We're hoping that the Harney County judge removes his preliminary injunction. That he has not made a final decision. He just said earlier this week, hey, I'm going to put it on hold. Let's come back next week. Let's have a more robust hearing. And so his hold is just temporary. Now, the federal judge's ruling that she's not going to toss it, that's just temporary too. So we're waiting for both of them to get to their final ruling. And I hope both of their final rulings are that it's constitutional. And at that point, then it'll go up the appellate chain. And then we're hoping the U.S. Supreme Court ultimately rules it to be constitutional.
Fascinating. We're talking with John Hummel. He is the district attorney for Deschutes County and a member of the Measure 114 committee that put this thing together, this gun restriction law or gun control law here in Oregon. And John, Deschutes County, most people have no idea what I'm talking about when I say Deschutes County. This is a largely very rural part of Oregon. It's kind of in the center of the state toward the east, and Bend is the largest town, correct me if I'm wrong, and a fairly conservative area. And you're the district attorney there. How is it being received in your county?
Well, I tell you what, Deschutes County is a changing community. It was a timber town for, dozens, if not over 100 years. And then when, timber went away in the West, Deschutes County reinvented itself as a tourist community. And it is a community that is divided like so many other communities. We definitely have the longtime residents who are, former loggers and descendants of former loggers who live in the more rural communities. And we have a lot of people from larger cities who've moved to Bend for the fly fishing and golf, mountain biking, microbrewery, mountain town type feel. And so this measure, 114, it was right about 50-50. I haven't checked the final certified results, but it's coming in about tied. And that's a community I've always represented, the community that is kind of split right down the middle. What I've always told people is, look, they're going to get the straight talk from me. They elected me to keep our community safe and ultimately to save lives. I think 114 will save lives. That's why I support it.
So finally, John Hummel, what advice do you have to people who are listening outside of Oregon, who are thinking, hey, this is a great idea, maybe we should do this in our state? Where do they start?
Well, here's what you have to start with. What we've always talked about on 114, this isn't a anti-gun measure. There's many gun owners who are, part of the group that is advocating for 114. We respect the rights of gun owners, and as we just touched upon, am from a rural part of the state where gun ownership is part of the culture. People grew up, hunting and fishing, and this is about responsible gun ownership. Every gun owner I know would do everything that 114 calls for already. They talk to their kids about the dangers of guns. They show their kids how to safely use guns. And so if you're a responsible gun owner, you should be for 114. So I say anyone who across the country who's considering enacting, reasonable gun safety regulations, they should lead with respect for gun owners. They should understand what gun ownership means. To many people, it means self-defense and hunting, but for many others, it also means this is part of my culture. If you're going to attack gun ownership, you're not attacking the gun, you're attacking my dad, my granddad, my grandmother, who all grew up with guns, and that gets real personal, and people get their hackles up. So talk about respect for gun ownership and talk about saving lives.
Yeah, and that's why I keep calling it gun control and you keep calling it gun safety. I think that's a really important distinction.
You bet.
Yeah, okay. John Hummel, and I will recalibrate my language now going forward. John Hummel, the Deschutes County District Attorney and one of the people who helped put together Measure 114, dcda.us. John_Hummel is John's Twitter handle. John, thanks a lot for District Attorney Hummel. Thank you very much for dropping by. It's great meeting you.
Yeah, you can call me John anytime. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, John. Great talking with you.
Bye.